Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Christian Crowe, a co-founder of Wilson Crowe Strategic Wealth, a firm helping families build a seven-figure impact and lasting legacy for generations. Christian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Hey, Christian, can you share a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My name's Christian. Reside here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, born and raised here. I have been a business owner at Wilson Crowe since we started back in around May, April last year. My side of the business, what I do is I help people build legacy. That's what I trademark it as. So I work on the estate planning side of people's wealth creation. That's what I do.
That's great. Now, what led you into the business? I always love hearing kind of the origin story. Yours might be a little bit shorter than some of the advisors. You're kind of new to the business and everything, but nevertheless, it doesn't subtract anything from what you're doing. But how did you get started in the financial business?
Yeah, so if you'd have told me in college that I would be working in finance, I would have told you were crazy and that there was no chance. So really stepping into this wasn't so much out of a desire to get into finance. It was out of a desire just for kind of more freedom. So Gavin, my business partner, I've known him since freshman year of college, so 2019. And after we graduated, we kind of both went our separate ways. We were very close, and we always had conversation around, building a business together, impacting people, and just staying connected and doing what we can to serve. And so after college, he did his thing with golf. I got a job at a local logistics company here called Axle. Great people, love the people there, but I exceeded, did very well, but did not like kind of who I was as a person. I found myself drifting from things like my faith and my health. So I was looking for a change and had really no doors open anywhere. And I spoke to Gavin on a daily basis, and he was kind of in the same boat as me, but he was already in finance. And he was just like, hey, why don't we just go ahead and try it? And everything made sense. And so I just stepped into it, and it's taken some time to get to where I'm doing what I do now. But yeah, that's really it.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great story. And again, I mean, you did it a little bit more on purpose from the perspective of made that decision. I kind of got recruited into the whole business 30 years ago. So I always love hearing kind of how somebody got in. Now, you talk obviously a lot about legacy, but not just what you leave, but also what do we become? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So a lot of the reason why I am focused on legacy and kind of becoming the best version of yourself has to do with my upbringing and my family. I have a little brother who has a terminal illness called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We found out when he was 5, so I was about 9 or 10 at the time. And he's a young man. He's still going strong, 19. But he's a young man who has impacted people at a very high level while being very restricted and restrained in his ability to. He can't walk. His mental comprehension is good, but it's a little bit delayed. So for him, what people have always told us, and what I tell myself is that his condition is for a purpose, right? And it's for a greater purpose that I don't understand, and I probably never will. But what I've seen throughout his life is people that have come close to him or come close to him through me. He is just an inspiration to everybody. So for him, he will have a legacy that people couldn't imagine when he's not here one day. But right now, while he's still here, he's impacting people at a high level. And that is something that I've always held near and dear to me, which is a lot of the reason why I wanted to get out of what I was doing, because I knew I wasn't a type of person that was really impacting people in a positive way. And so that's why I focus a lot on it. Gavin's dad, Ben, has also been a big factor in that with me. He coaches me a little bit, and I kind of stole the saying from him. legacy isn't what we leave behind. That's, the things that we instill in people once we're gone. So I kind of stole that from him, but it just does a good job of summing up my whole life and all that I've known. So,
Yeah. No, that's a great story. I mean, as in, I personally believe there's two important days in our life: the day we're born, and then the day that we discover why.
yeah.
And it sounds like the work that you were doing before, it just wasn't fulfilling. You knew that God created you for something more. And I believe that God created us, on purpose, for purpose. And it's really our job to go and do that. So unfortunately, there's quite a lot of people that kind of die at the age of 25. They don't just get buried until 75. They never kind of wake up. Right. So this is a, great story that you have. So if you had to sum up your mission, like what your kind of mission or vision is for you right now in a couple of sentences, what would that be?
Um, that's always a tough question for me, because I have so many goals that I set for myself and things I want to accomplish. So sometimes I have a tough time separating, personal success versus, like purpose, I think. That's something that I pray about a ton. But if if I had to answer it the best way I could right now in life, I would say that I just want to impact people. And I know that's cliche, right? Like every business says that, every business owner or salesman says, "I just want to help you," right? And I know some people, it's hard to know when somebody's being genuine about that. But I truly just want to impact people in a positive way. So I want to help people create structure. Um, and through our business, Gavin wants people to do the same thing and help them create more wealth. But if I were to look back into my life and say, look back at everything I accomplished, if I did nothing but just had a positive influence on people, I would call that success. Right. So that's really what I want to do. Obviously, I have personal goals as far as, we want to get the business to a certain amount of revenue, personal income, real estate, whatever it may be. But if I never accomplished any of those personal goals, but I influence people in a positive way, that would be enough for me.
Yeah. No, so what I'm hearing you say is more from the perspective of, and again, you're just kind of starting in life from that perspective, in business and everything. You got a long career ahead of yourself, but you're grounded that you know what's important, right? And again, God and following God and Jesus Christ is the most important thing. And if you can go and have that impact through the work that you do, right, that's really what's going to go and make the difference. Because at the end of the day, when you're in the financial business, it's not about the money, right? And I think that's kind of the important part that most people don't realize. And I always, when I speak to advisors, I tell them, listen, yeah, it's a financial business, it's about money, but really, when you start talking to people, it's never about the money. It's
Yeah.
about what they want to go and achieve, and leaving a lasting legacy is helping people to shift or change how they view their life and how they look at what they're doing, and how they're doing it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
when you think about the families you work with, what kinds of kind of financial or life questions are they usually kind of wrestling with when
Mm.
they come to you first?
So, one thing I actually was making a video about it today. So it's different based off age groups. I've worked with a bunch of families who are kind of in their late 30s, early 40s when it comes to the estate planning. But I still have people reach out to me, being a business owner, knowing what we do, and ask things about, what is the best investment I can make. So they'd still ask me financial stuff, even though I'm not very passionate about answering it. And um, but I probably get that question the most is like, what is the best thing I can invest in? And for those people, every single person, I always have the same answer, which is the best investment you can make is the one that you make back into yourself.
Hmm.
Whether that is, reading more books or surrounding yourself with, I call this the power of people. The power of people is just surrounding yourself with people who are willing to help you grow in every aspect of your life. And so that's probably one of the most common questions I get is what's the best investment I can make? I always tell people it's back into yourself. Um, those are like that can be that ranges from the young man, wanting to create, $4 billion worth of wealth, right? Very passionate. And then the old individuals too, who are just like, I want to do a little bit better than I can or I'm doing right now. So
Yeah. Well, you bring a great point. I 100% agree with you. The best investment we can make is in ourselves, right? And that's the only asset we can really truly control 100%,
Yeah.
because what we have or what we don't have is our fault because it's our choices. It's our decisions that got us to where we're at. So
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you, with that's the best thing that anybody can do, is to really go and invest in themselves.
Yeah.
And again, finding out what that purpose is so that they can actually fully live out the purpose and the reason why they're here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too, some people, when they talk about investing in themselves, I do think that there is, like a monetary aspect of literally like buying things to help you get better, buying more knowledge.
Mm,
For me, it doesn't necessarily look like, getting a coach. It's more so looked at like, what can I do right now that is going to just make me kind of a better person,
mm,
right? So, for me, that's I volunteer more at my church, or I go and I exercise to help my mental, right, or I get in the scripture a ton, and that's really been the biggest impact I've had on myself over the last since we started. Um,
mm.
but I did want to clear that up because I have a lot of people ask me that, like, oh, okay, well, I want to buy a coach or I want to go get a coach. I'm like, it gets expensive, so it may not make the most sense right now. So,
Yeah.
but
But I think what it comes down to, and I tend to look at our life kind of, there was these four core areas, right? There was our body being balance in business, or faith, family, fitness, and finance, whichever way you want
yeah,
to go and look at it.
yeah,
But it's like every day we're taking withdrawals from this, right? We're
yeah,
making withdrawals not only from our bank accounts financially, but withdrawals from our relationships, withdrawals from uh, as far as our health, right, is concerned, our body and all that stuff. Well, what we need to make sure also that every day we're actually making deposits. We're
yeah,
actually, spending some, doing quiet times reading the Bible. We're exercising, right? We're actually going out there and doing our vocation, making some money so we can put money in the bank account. We're investing into the relationships that we have. And I think when I look at a lot of people, unfortunately, they're usually bankrupt in many of these areas and don't even realize it because they're putting all of their focus in one and they
mhm,
kind of ignore of the others. And for me, it's never to be kind of in that position. It's like, hey, how can I go and have all of them? Maybe not all of them at 10 all the time, because that's a little bit more difficult. But
yeah,
how are we somewhere between, like, maybe 6 and 8 on a consistent basis where they're all kind of leveled off a little bit? And then obviously working on getting them to 10, right? But it's not a matter of focusing on, because it's difficult to try to go and focus on all of the areas, because really you can only focus on one area at a time, but
yeah,
making sure that you go and do those daily deposits into it.
yeah, yeah. I've got a buddy who um, I hired on, as lack of better terms, hired on as a fitness coach. He's getting into the
Mm,
industry, and I had a day where I didn't eat any of the meals that he had, told me to
mm,
eat, but I still maintained like a good balanced diet that day. And he said this, and it stuck with me. And I may butcher it, but I think he said, "Consistently good beats rarely great."
yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like every day, as long as you're just consistently doing good things, you're going to end up better than occasionally doing great things.
Yeah. No,
And
100%.
that's
Listen, most people think when you look at where they are right now, the success or the lack of success is never like one or big decisions that you've made, right? Like buying a house or buying a car. Like those are fairly big decisions. The success where you are at right now, or the lack of success, is
uh,
dependent on all the small little insignificant daily actions that you're doing, right?
yeah,
So when we're talking about health, right, it's not like that one cake that you have that makes the difference. No, it's those bad choices daily for the last,
yeah,
how many years that you've had, right? Kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
like, in baseball, right? Most World Series are not won on home runs, right? They're won on singles, because
yeah,
it's right.
yeah,
It's that point, and if you just go there and you're hitting for singles, you know what? If you just focus on that, you can get the bases loaded, and then you can bring somebody home, right?
yeah,
Theoretically, after 4 hits. But
yeah,
when you try to go and hit big time, you're going to struck out a lot more than if you have that consistency.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's I don't talk about this a ton, but I've done a little bit of fighting. I did a little bit of amateur kickboxing.
Mm,
My dad was a professional, and he did a little bit of coaching, and used to always tell me, if you go in simply looking to try to knock somebody out, you're not going to win the fight, and
yeah.
you're going to get frustrated. But if you go in and just try to be technical, pick your shots, you're more likely you're going to knock somebody out. Now, not to get violent on here, right? But yeah, no, it's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether that's with money, you shouldn't be aiming to, you know, only make big hits. Like you should be consistently saving a little bit of money. Like your cash flow should be there, and then eventually maybe you will hit a home run somewhere someday in business or whatever it may be. But yeah,
No,
perfectly
no,
said.
I like that story. What comes to me, listen, you eventually could go and cut down a tree with a butter knife if you sit there every day and you kind of chisel away at it. Not that I'm suggesting that for anybody, right? But it's the consistency, right? Just like water, right? I mean, water can break down rock or solid, objects, but
Yeah,
it's the consistency of, or I'm thinking of river rocks, right? Like they're all smooth and everything because the water runs over top of them. So
yeah,
that's a great advice or great analogy. So
yeah.
when you're working with somebody, what's usually going on behind the scenes, right? When clients come to you, right? What is happening kind of behind the scenes with them, with their family, or even finances and everything?
So when you get into families who are looking at, creating their, let's just, their trust, right? Their estate plan. Typically it's easier for couples who are, kind of at that age range I said earlier, like late 30s, early 40s, couple kids, who are just kind of transitioning into this. Um, I don't know if it's more maturity or just like a different time of life and like a mindset. But behind the scenes for them, they're just wanting to sleep a little bit better at night.
Hmm.
I just want to say, hey, I have built something. I've built a pretty decent life. I love my kids, and I just want to make sure that if I'm not here, that it's not going to be too hard on them. Right? They want to make sure they want to do at least the things they can now. So when that day eventually comes, their families can just say, hey, mom or dad, I love mom or dad. I miss them,
Hmm.
and just simply mourn, right, and not have to worry about oh, I've got to figure out how to get the house in my name now. I got to figure out how to get all these financial accounts, transferred over or whatever, and go through that process that typically, probate that nobody enjoys.
No.
So that's typically where it's at. Some of the younger couples that I've worked with, um, they just like to get ahead of the game and they know it's something they'll eventually do. So they'd rather, you know, build their trust out now and grow into it with the future. So it just varies.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of what most people, I think that kind of the traditional financial system doesn't really teach is just this whole idea that you want to control things, you don't necessarily want to own them. Because
Yeah.
with ownership, there are more challenges with it. There is taxation and all that. And again, make life less taxing. That's the name of the podcast. That's what we're doing. And it's not just about money. It's in all of the areas of our life. But if you have control, is more important than the actual ownership of the assets that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, that gets into the, what would the Rockefellers do
Yeah.
method, and which I the Rockefeller method, which I fully believe in. I have, a lot of my clients um haven't even, kind of looked at it that way. They just simply want to, again, sleep better at night.
Yeah.
They just want to simply know that, hey, like they don't care necessarily about what controls what. A matter of fact, a lot of my clients have a pretty simple financial situation to where they don't even think that high level, and so they just simply want to know that they're doing the right things to take care of their family, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, you said you're not in the business of, managing money, but you're more in business of helping people really rediscover their worth. What does that look like in practice?
oh man, that is it is a very good question. So I'll talk first kind of just about like when somebody sits down with me, what that looks
Yeah.
like. Um, it's a lot easier to kind of really have that impact in a different setting. But when somebody sits down, a lot of people, I know you wouldn't be surprised by this, but a lot of people simply just don't know what they've built. They just don't have really an idea of the um, the appreciation they should have for themselves and what they've created so far in life. You know, uh, Especially here in Tennessee, if you're a homeowner, like that's a big deal. It's a really big deal, because it ain't cheap down here. It is not. It's very competitive down here to buy a house, and it is very expensive. Um, but when somebody sits down and, I've had people say this. I literally have had somebody say this. I won't have an estate to pass down. I'm like, what do you mean? And then we sat down, had a meeting, and did some reflection. That's all we did. And we looked at their house and we looked at all the assets they had created, financially, their insurances, and they were looking at like $3 or $4 million theoretically they were going to pass on. I was like, dude, you've done very well. And this guy was in his mid 40s. It's like, you have done very, very well. You should be proud of yourself. And when people can kind of have a little bit of pat themselves on the back a little bit, they kind of see more of the worth that they have. And then when you start talking about, does your wife work? Oh, no, she doesn't. So you are the sole source of income. That's a big accomplishment. So in these conversations, people, both husbands and wives are, they see that they're more than just an average person, that they're actually doing something unique that they should be proud of. But that's just when a client, is wanting to sit down. I I try at all times to have one person who is close to where I'm at. Like, I'm 24, about to be 25, so there's not many people out there much younger than me, right? So, um, people who I try to have somebody who is, around 20, 21 that is about to step into a career, step into maybe marriage. And I try to kind of take them under my wing and just do like a monthly sit down with them to really help them figure out, you know, who they are and what they're about to step into and the
No,
person they could be and the things they can accomplish. So,
yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, we're kind of back to everybody's born on purpose for purpose, and that's really important for them to discover that. Now, where do you see people kind of giving away too much control when it comes to their finances?
well, the most common spot, and this is stepping in the Gavin's world, is definitely just in regular monthly cash flow.
Mm,
Um, and whether that is how they have their debt structured or, just how they are simply managing their inflows and outflows. I actually just recently, I've got some bad debt in my life from earlier decisions in life before I got to start working with the great Gavin Wilson about
yeah,
how I could, best structure myself. But um, I just recently refinanced a couple loans, saved myself 200 or 300 bucks a month.
mm,
And so the first place that people typically seem to have the least control is their monthly cash flow, and that's because they don't have structure. They just spend, make money, spend, and have no idea where it's going. So, um, but then in the sense of people's estates, it's always probate. And that's the toughest conversation because you can't experience that right now. That's something that you are going to force somebody else to experience on your behalf if you're not correctly structured. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
yeah, no, that's great. So, and I had a conversation earlier on another podcast episode that I recorded this morning, and we were talking about people get a raise and then they go and get a car lease or a car loan, right? Or buy a car, right? And they get a raise for $500, but they buy a car that, it's a $600 payment. And it's like, no, you're going in the wrong direction, and $500 raise, you maybe can
Yeah,
afford like a $200 car a
right.
month payment, right? Not even 500. And again, people just don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
So, what's something that people often accept as normal in their financial life, but when they really see it differently, it completely changes everything for them?
Hmm. So I think it's a tough one to answer. I think that seems to be, at least from my experience with people, exactly the example you just gave seems to be the most common. I've
Mm,
made a little bit more money, so that means I should spend a little bit more.
yeah,
Now, we we may do things a little bit differently. Like, we do encourage spending. We do believe like, hey, you should enjoy your life. You should not have to turn your AC off in the summer to save money. Like, we believe that.
yeah,
But I think you're exactly right. Most people think, well, I'm making a little bit extra money a month now, so I should go take on, you know, the same amount in debt per month, right? And that really seems to be the most common, especially people my age. I mean, I've done that. I think everybody at some point has. You start making money and you go buy a vehicle, or you go buy, something that you don't really need, where the money could be best spent somewhere else.
mm,
Um, so yeah, that'd be the most common.
yeah. Now, a lot of what I'm hearing you say, that a lot of the families and the individuals that you're working with, they're really going after greatness, right? Not just the gains. how do you help them to really define what what the greatness really is, and what does that actually mean to them?
I've been blessed to work with a lot of, you know, believers, a lot of Christians. Not to say that I don't work with unbelievers, but I have been blessed to work with a bunch of believers. So really helping people kind of understand who they are as a follower of Christ. I fully believe that I am a steward of what I have. I
Mm,
don't own anything, right? Even, yes, my name's on my mortgage, my vehicles, and all my other personal property. But at the end of the day, it's because God blessed me with that stuff, right? So being able to understand that, yes, while you possess these things, and yes, you may have worked hard to get these things, it's still God who blessed you with those things. So understanding that you should behave more with that mindset of with just being more intentional
mm,
helps a lot of people understand like how they should behave. So with Christians, I typically I point them to Proverbs, and it's I think it's Proverbs 13:22 or vice versa, but and it just says, like, we are here, and a wise man leaves back an inheritance for his children's children.
mm.
So that's my biggest go-to verse because of what I do with estate planning. But um, we are instructed to be intentional with money. To create generational wealth, you have to be very intentional. Like it's not something that just happens. You have to have structure. It's not hard, but you have to have structure. So some people understand like, hey, congratulations, pat yourself on the back, but this is still God's. Everything points back to Him. We're going to return back to Him the same way that we came here. So let's behave correctly while we're here.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not just live like a tumbleweed. Let's live intentional.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's being intentional about it, right? And I love that verse because yeah, it's like it's not just like anybody can go and take care of their children. I mean, that's just a given, but the instruction is, and I think a lot of people, a lot of Christians miss that, right? It's like,
Yeah,
no, no, you're there to leave a legacy that's multi-generational, right?
yeah,
Your children's children, right?
yeah,
And I think this is the one point when I kind of look at a lot of individuals, they don't think about it that way. They're just trying to, not that they're not thinking about it, they're just trying to go and take care of themselves. When it comes to the kids, yeah, the kids maybe get an inheritance, but usually they get it at a time where they don't really need it because they've already had their life and they build everything, right? And it's like, no, 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 we really should be planning where it's multi-generational wealth that has been created. And I think in the traditional system, and we have a movement, I call it keep what is yours and break free from the traditional financial system.
uh-huh,
Under the traditional financial system, nobody really teaches the strategies where people can go and create that multi-generational wealth,
yeah,
right? It doesn't mean that they have to go and make more money or they have to become millionaires in order to go and do that. But there are some strategies and ideas that most people are not aware of that can
yeah,
actually create multi-generational wealth.
yeah,
And again, they're not teaching that. I mean, they don't teach basic financial literacy, let alone
yeah.
some of these advanced strategies. But I think it's great that you and your firm and with Gavin that you're going like, hey, you know what, we're going to go and start teaching this. What I love about this is that the age that you guys are, you're in your 20s and you already have this knowledge. The first day that I met Gavin, my mind was blown. I'm like going, how old, what? Like my
Yeah,
brain was not computing it. I just celebrated my 50th birthday, 53rd birthday on Sunday.
happy
And I'm
birthday.
like, man, I'm still not there with some of the things that you are, and you are already that ahead. So you guys have a great start, but it's really great to hear what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we had a guy that close friend of mine, great man, runs his own business. And my first week that I started, I was trying to be a strategist. I booked all these meetings
Yeah.
and had Gavin with me. He came down from Nashville and I was so excited. And one of the first things that I said or that was said to me by a higher level client was, you guys got too much baby face. You need more gray hair. And I was like, man, I can't fix that. Like, this is all I can do. Like, this is it. I
Yeah.
look like I'm 17, 18 with a little bit of facial hair. But we get that all the time. We had a meeting up in Mount Juliet, and um, the owner of the real estate company that we were meeting with, now he already knew us or knew Gavin, but had his team of agents there who had never met us. And when we got done with our presentation, he came and he saw us and he said, "Good job." We were like, "Thanks."
Yeah.
And he was like, "The first thing they asked was, 'How old are you guys?'" And when he told them that we were 24,
Yeah.
they were like, no way, no way. So I get that all the time. But
Yeah.
also wanted to say this too, talking about generational wealth. Gavin and I have also really challenged what the definition of wealth is.
Mm.
You know, um, I obviously there's a financial, like there's a monetary definition behind that. A dollar amount, right? An inheritance, what
Yeah.
most people refer to. Um, but we actually challenge that. Wealth, generational wealth, is so much more than just money, right?
Mm.
I had so many experiences with my brother that have
Yeah.
shaped me into the man that I am today. And, I've got my first kid on the way, so does Gavin. And the reality of that is that, our children are never going to experience the things we've experienced, not to a T at least. My God forbid, my children are never going to experience having a sibling with terminal illness. They're never going to experience, 2 a.m. hospital visits because, he fell and, broke his foot. And they're never going to experience, having to bathe somebody like that. They're never going to experience having to, stand up for them at school because they're being made fun of for their disability. Like they're not going to experience these things, but that doesn't mean that these things die off. These
Yeah.
experiences die off. So I I'm editing it right now, but I've actually, in a lot of my meetings, I've told people this, like, hey, we're going to talk a lot about money, but there's so much more to you than the money you're going to leave behind. There is experiences,
Yeah.
memories, there's your testimony, you know, those things are more valuable than money, in my opinion. So how can we pass these things down? So, I've created something called a memory vault where, after families have worked with me, I send it to them. And I'm like, hey, just use this as like a journal. Let's keep this with your documents, lock them up somewhere and continually add to it. And one day, I wish I would have had something from, you know, my great grandparents and people beyond who have that I could go to and be like, I'm going through something. I wonder if they ever went through this, you know?
Well, it's the wisdom, right? It's the knowledge that
Yeah.
they have. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the movie The Ultimate Gift?
I have, and I feel wrong for saying I haven't watched it.
Well, you
Yeah.
you should. You should go and
Yeah.
watch it because they
No.
actually did The Ultimate Gift and they did Ultimate Life. Uh, I can't remember the person that, what was his name? Can't remember his name. I actually met him. He was actually the person that wrote the story. First, he wrote the book. He was actually blind, and he is blind.
Yeah.
And it's a great story as far as creating legacy and everything that's done. But also, I don't know if you ever heard of Lee Brower. There was Brower Quadrants. When I was an advisor, I read his stuff, and he had this napkin presentation that one day he did with this client. Actually, or no, he just met somebody on a plane, and the first time he drew it, he was having this conversation, and he asked the question was like, what we know that people have financial assets, but I believe altogether there are like 4 assets that we have, and then he says there is the core assets, which is basically like who you are, your faith, your health, and all of these things. Those are your core assets. Then you have your experiential assets, which are basically your vocation, your education, and everything that you're doing. Then the third assets are contributory assets. And he says that's philanthropy and taxes. And most people go, what, taxes, assets? What do you mean by that? Well, with the tax code, you get to choose how much tax you basically pay. Again, most people don't understand that, but you have
Uh-huh.
control over it. And then you have your financial assets. And then he would go and ask the question, going like, okay, out of those 4 assets, if you could only transfer 3, you have to like forego one of those assets. Which one would it be? And when I was working with clients, when I told them that story, pretty well 100% of the time it was like financial assets. And I said, so why are we only talking about finances? Where
Yeah.
what you're telling me that if you give the right core assets, experiential assets, and contributory assets, if you educate your children on this, they're the important ones. You know that they will have the financial ones. Yet everybody only talks about finances. And I would
Right.
literally say, so hey, when would you want to get started?
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's talk about the things that are important. The other question I would actually ask, part of that was like, okay, just imagine everything that you own right now is sitting in a big pile of cash on the counter. If you were to wake up tomorrow morning, would you go back and repurchase every single thing that you have ever bought before, and we're talking your houses, cars, toys, cottage, whatever, like everything. Again, 100% of people, no, I would go and make different choices. And I would say, again, when do you want to get started? Because so
Yeah.
many people have these things, they accumulate this stuff, and they
Yeah.
feel like, oh, I'm stuck with this. I can't. No, it's like, no, you're not. You have a choice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can change it, you can sell it. Yeah. Are there going to be consequences? Are things going to change? But like, why don't you let this be the first day for the rest of your life where you actually start making those changes? And I think what I'm hearing from you, that's essentially what you're doing with clients. And I think for you, the age that you are, and put it that way, I remember when I got into the business, I had the same problem like 30 years ago. The reason I'm still wearing this, part of it is laziness, part of it is I've had it for the last 30 years,
Yeah.
it kind
Yeah.
of make me look a little bit older. But if I can give you an advice around that, turn it around into a positive. When somebody asks that, going like, hey, listen, I want you to know that when you're going to need me the most, guess what? I'm going to be in my like 40s or 50s, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be actually serve you. Most people that I see, they work with an older advisor. They get older, the advisor get older. When they need the advisor the most, the advisor's retired. They have
Yeah.
to build a new relationship. Guess what? I'm going to be there for you, right?
Right.
And again, listen, you already know this. There's a whole business. It's all about stories, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, not that the best story wins, but I think, you mentioned Rockefeller method. I love the story around there because it just makes sense, and either resonates with them or it doesn't, right? So you're going and building that relationship with with who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, it's really
Exactly.
great. So when we're talking about financial independence, how do you define what does that actually look like for you? I mean, we know that we're talking about there's all of the other stuff out of the finances, which is more
Yeah.
important. But when it comes down to kind of financial independence, how would you define that?
Um, you know, I'll be the first one to say I am not, I'm not financially independent myself yet. And nobody should expect me to be, right?
Yeah,
We're talking about, I'm sitting here young. But I think financial independence really is just the ability to say yes and say no to different things.
mm,
One of the most successful people in my life, that's how he defines it. He still has to get up and go to still he doesn't financially have to get up and go to work every day. Like, he could retire today and be
yeah,
fine. Now his conscience doesn't tell him that's true. So, but for him, it's the ability to say, "Hey, I'm going to say yes to this thing. I'm going to say no to this thing, and it's not going to affect anything about my life. I'd
yeah,
still be fine if I said, the opposite answer or whatever it may be." So I really think it's just the ability to just say, "Hey, you know, does this bring me joy? Okay, I'm going to say yes to it. But if I can't say yes right now, that's fine too."
yeah,
So really, all I strive for when it comes to financial independence is, yes, being able to say yes. Being able to say, "Hey, I'm going to take a couple hours today and just go spend it with my family and not have to worry about food being on the table." But for me, it's just finding that level of comfort that I could live with for the rest of my life. Gavin and I were actually talking about that yesterday. We have big goals with the company. We want it to get to, you know, as big as it can get, and we want the money to flow. We want it to overflow, right? But, we will never feel satisfied if we cannot find a place where we say, "Hey, if I made this amount of money for the rest of my life, I would be content." And that's a really tough question to answer. The answer will change multiple times. It does for me. But you have to be able to at least have a good ballpark idea. And then once you get there, maintain it. Don't let the love of more get to you.
no, no. You bring a great point. And again, from the perspective of when is enough enough, it's never that question. It's like, hey, I tend to look at it this way when it comes down to freedom for me. I'm in my business, I'm under, these four freedoms, right? The freedom of doing the work that I love, working on purpose, right? Working with people that I love doing it. Like, I don't want to work with clients that I don't like, right? Like, why would I go and do that? And then being able to do it whenever I want and wherever I want, right?
Yeah.
And if I go and gain those four freedoms, that's really becomes more satisfying. Listen, we all could retire right now. It just means that our lifestyle might have to get a lot different than it is right now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think from that perspective, it's really up to everyone to just have the understanding that uh, they have choices and decisions that are going to lead to the results they're going to have. And we all have that power to actually go and do something about that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so listen, what's something that, you intentionally kind of simplified in your own life or business that really created unexpected freedom for you?
Um, it's the same thing that I preach to people on social media and all my clients. It's this idea of, it's a dumb, watered down version of the Rockefeller method,
Mm,
right? Of just creating generational wealth without being rich. And, I by no means am rich. Most people aren't. Um, but once I got the things in place that, I know with 100% confidence that if it's my time tomorrow, if the Lord calls me home, that I will have set a structure in place where the people I love, people that depend on me, my wife and my daughter to be, and my brother and my family, um, they would be taken care of.
yeah,
So, I mean, that for me gives me freedom. It gives me freedom to go and, I play basketball on Tuesday nights. I'm going to go as hard as I can every Tuesday night, and not worry about what happens. Right. We have a client that, I think his reviews on our website, where he said, he's a killer. He works in mortgages. He is an absolute dog, a stud. And once he got his correct life insurances in place, he literally sent us all a text. I was like, I slept better last night.
mm,
He's like, because I create a massive amount of income, but if I died tomorrow, it would be completely wiped down to zero. He's like, so I know with 100% certainty that, hey, my family's taken care of for the next 10, 15 years. I can't remember how much he bought,
yeah,
but it was good. So that for me, like just understanding that, um, even if I never get to a point to where my income is super high, I've done the correct things that's going to take care of my family. And
yeah.
that's what matters the most.
Yeah, no, no, that's a great point. Now, if someone's listening and wanted to kind of begin taking back more of that control in their financial life, what would be the one thing that you'd encourage them to really question first what they're doing, and what would be kind of the first thing that they should maybe do?
We just recently came up with this idea, and it's like the only sad part of what I do, and some of what Gavin does, is you have to think about your own death. Like, who wants to do that,
Yeah,
right? That's a scary thing to think about, even for believers. Like, that's scary. Um, I would put myself in this scenario. I would say, okay, if today starts a clock, a countdown from 30 days from now, at the end of day 30, I 100% am not going to be here on this earth anymore. I'm going to go be with the Lord. I would ask myself two questions. What would I do that would bring me joy? What would be the one thing that I would go and try to do that would make me the happiest and make me feel the most fulfilled? And the second thing is, what would I structure differently to make sure the people that care about me are taken care of? Right. And that gets down to what we do. But that it's so hard for people. I am an anomaly. I know this. I am 24 with a trust in place and millions of dollars of life insurance. It's not right. No, nobody my age does that.
you're a bit of
Uh,
a unicorn. Yes, I'll have
I'm a
to
bit of
admit
a
to
unicorn.
that.
And but you know, it's hard to think about what would happen.
Mm,
It's sad, and a lot of it's a blur because most people don't know. But I would sit and I'd talk with my wife, or if it's just me, my parents, and I would say, hey, like, what would happen? What would I do? What would I need to what would I need to set in place? And if the answer is blurry, then you need to come talk to us.
mm. Well, it's a great advice. I think what it comes down to is just like start having the conversation. I mean, there was only one life, therefore there's like one death, right? Like
Right.
it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that I have to be morbid, but it just starts saying like, hey, what is going to happen? It reminds me when I was working with business owners. Often I would sit down and we'd have a meeting with their employees, and I'd be like going, okay, John, go and sit in the corner there. You're dead. You can't speak. And I look at the team going like, okay, he's dead. What's going on? What's going to happen tomorrow?
Yep.
Right? And everybody's like, I don't know. And, John starts speaking. I said, no, 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 be quiet. You're dead. You can't talk. It was a point trying to drive, right? Where a lot of people think, oh, there's always tomorrow's going to come. Everything's going to be fine. But the reality is we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 seconds, right? Let alone what's going to happen tomorrow. But having that conversation and start talking about it, And you mentioned the Rockefeller method again. It's just a way of having a great story to go and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I like more of that, building the legacy, all of that. And then start having the conversation so that, you can start moving in that direction. We're not asking, I don't believe you're asking people to change 100% in one day, but even if
Uh,
they just like went and did something that's maybe like 1%, and they do that every day, right? That the whole idea of 1% improvement, right? That's going to make a huge difference. Consistency, we're back to what we mentioned before, right? Down the road.
yeah, and I would say this too. I feel like I should say this. We're talking. I know we're talking about business here, and that's what I'd encourage people to do. But really, what has helped me the most is getting closer to the Lord.
Mm,
Seriously, because when you can really get intimate in your faith, which when I was in my last job, I wasn't at all. And, the first couple months, I saw no success
mm,
of the business, not at all. No extra money made, no commissions, no clients, no nothing. And, um, but during that time, I made it the goal that I'm going to submit to God. And I still have areas in my life where I've really got to work on that. I do. I had a meeting today with a close friend of mine who I would love to have as a client, but I have just told him like, dude, I just want to meet with you because I need to, I need some, I need some bread today. I need you to feed me. I need you to help me with what I'm going through in my walk with Christ. And, but doing that, submitting everything in my life to the Lord to the best of my ability is really what changed the game for
mm,
me. It wasn't a product. It wasn't going to the gym. It wasn't, reading more books. It was, I need to be close to the Lord. So if there was one thing I could tell people, it would be to call out to Jesus and say, hey, like,
mm.
I need help with this life. I am not enough, but you are.
Yeah.
That's
No,
what I would tell people over everything. Now we're talking business. So,
yeah.
that's,
No, no,
that's
no.
a,
Listen,
but
making life less taxing, and it's not just about business. And that was the reason for this podcast. Is just for people to have the ability to learn a little bit more about you. So, listen, as we're coming down to the end of the podcast, there's four. I call them rapid fire questions. What's the first thing that comes to your mind as far as the answer is usually the right one here? So the first question is, what's a favorite book that really shaped your thinking?
I cliche, but what would the Rockefellers do?
No, it's a great book. Morning
It is.
morning routine or habit you can't live without.
Oh, exercise. Doesn't matter if it's morning or afternoon. I cannot live without
Mm,
exercising.
awesome. Is there one bucket list item that you haven't done yet?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sad that I'm not going or I didn't commit to going, but it wouldn't have worked out anyways because my baby is due in May. But I would love to go out to like Jerusalem. I had a
Yes.
chance to, I didn't, but I want to go out and see where Jesus walked.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
that's a great one. And by the way, congratulations on the new
Thank,
arrival. You're still a few months, but it's
thank
getting
you.
closer. So I'm sure you're
Kids
getting you're
are
getting excited.
wild. Yep.
And I'll tell you another cliche: enjoy them, man. You're gonna blink, and they're gonna be in their mid-20s, man. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
Yeah. Is there a surprising hobby or interest that recharges you?
Oh man. Yes, and some business owners are going to call me weak for doing this. I still play video games. I play video games. I play video games with some of my buddies from church, and then I go shooting a ton
Yeah.
too. I go shoot a ton. We're down here in the South. We love our guns. I go shoot a bunch, and those two things help me reset.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Now I've got a last question. You call it a hot one. Fast forward to end of your life. Imagine that everybody forgot everything that you ever taught them, showed them, or advised them on, but they do remember one message from you. What would you want that one message to be?
Again, it wouldn't even be business related. It would be that
Mm,
Jesus Christ came and he died, and he wants a relationship with you. He desires to be your top of your pyramid, and
mm,
you should submit to him and watch how he changes your life.
uh, awesome. Keep the main thing, and that is the main thing. Wow, awesome. What a powerful and perspective shifting conversation. Christian, thank you again for sharing your journey. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Our website, wilsoncrowestrategicwealth.com. Gavin and I are all over social medias too, TikTok, Instagram. It's all our business name and our personal name. So you just search us up and you'll find us.
Perfect. So if you're listening, be sure to check out all the resources and the websites. We're going to have the notes in the on the page. So all the websites and everything in the show notes. So that would be great. Christian, thank you again for your time and your message. And remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money. It's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building your wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Thank you again, Christian.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifilesstaxingpodcast.com.